say, tell me where you're really from. I ain't talking New York, I don't mean West Coast. I mean, look at your skin, so where you really from?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome and thank you for tuning into Great Wall of America, Untold Stories, a limited podcast series where we as immigrants share our stories of how we overcome barriers facing us in this country. Today's guest is Sanyal, a New York-based entrepreneur by way of Kolkata, India. Him and his brother founded Kolkata Chai in 2019, and since then, they've been connecting cultures and breaking boundaries one chai at a time. I've known him for over a decade, but this is our first time sitting down to chat. Here is Sanyal. Ani, what's good, my G?
What's going on, man?
All right, I'm going to start off with a question I've been asking everyone.
Let's do
Where
it.
are you from? But where are you really from?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I'm from India. You know,
Word.
that's where my parents are from. I was born here. I was conceived in India and born here. But when I think about where I'm from, like where, you know, the homeland is. Yeah, it's India.
India, no
Yeah.
doubt. All right, let me reframe that question real quick. Say you're, you know what I'm saying, you're taking like a break from running Kolkata. You're like in Europe somewhere. You're chilling on the beach.
Yeah.
You know, some shorty comes up, man. Yo, you fly. You know, where you from?
New York City.
All right,
Every
okay,
time.
cool, bet.
Every
And then she gonna hit you with the right. But where you really from?
Right.
Okay,
All the
right.
time.
Got it. But I like your answer. I like your answer of just being straight up, be like India. You know, like, and I know like India is so big, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I know there's like adjacent places like Bangladesh,
Bangladesh. Yeah.
right? Bangladesh. Sorry, yeah. And that's like, you know, I can't be calling somebody from there like Indian and
Sure.
stuff, right? What part of India specifically was your family from?
Calcutta or
Kolkata.
Kolkata.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So Kolkata is the way the city was pronounced before the British came and anglicized it.
Got it.
We know it as Calcutta, but previous to that, it was called Kolkata. So that's
okay.
why when my brother and I named the
Kolkata.
company, it was like, now let's take it back, you know, to
Yes.
where you really from. And
Yes.
it wasn't Calcutta, even though that's the popular way of saying it.
Right. Oh, that's interesting because it is an O there. And like if I would look at it, I said like Kolkata. You know, like
Right.
I like that.
Well, it's spelled differently too.
right.
yeah,
Right.
so-
Okay, got you. It's spelled
Yeah.
differently.
But the
Okay.
city is Calcutta.
Yeah.
It used to be the British capital, so
Oh,
it was
wow.
a thriving city, you know, in that time. But today, it's almost like the forgotten, ignored city in India because everywhere else there's so much technological advancement and business, and Kolkata is kind of like a bastard stepchild. It kind of got forgot and
Right.
left behind.
Do you think it's because it was so tabooed with the fact that it was like the capital?
Nah, I think it was more like there's been like a history of Marxist and communist influence in that area.
Got it.
And so it's layered and it's deep, but
Right,
you know,
right.
there's
It's
a lot
deep.
of like traditional old world kind of thinking that goes on in that area.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so that's just like the context of, you know, where my people come from.
It's complicated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like it. So you were conceived in India and you were born in the States.
Yeah.
Can you briefly talk about, you know, how your parents met and their decision of taking that leap of faith and coming to America?
Yeah, again, it's deep, you know, like
Yeah.
we pop up here and we live our lives here, and it's almost like we forget what our parents went through,
Yeah.
you know, to get to this point. And so my parents, both from the city of Kolkata, they had an arranged marriage, so they didn't really know each other before. This was, you know, back, I mean, it's still a thing, but for them, that was the norm back then, and they did a couple years before they decided to move here. And I think it was just, you know, my dad, brilliant guy, he just knew that there wasn't an opportunity for him to do what he wanted in that city.
Yeah.
And so they moved here probably a couple months before I was born. It was real crazy, like 4 months, 6 months, somewhere like that, just getting acclimatized, you know. I was born in Amherst in Western Mass, and so it was like 3 feet of snow, you know, the winter that I was born, things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
you know, you and I are both at a similar age now where like our parents probably had us at this age, you know, like my dad had 2 kids at the age that I'm at.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say for me, my mom was definitely younger when she
My
had
mom
me.
had me at 23.
Right.
Sorry, mom, if I got that wrong. 22, 23.
Yeah.
And it's like, you forget how much they had to go through. But
Right.
yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, I mean, bro, 22, 23. I mean, I think my mom had me when she was 25. I mean, I was a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
imagine what you were doing at 25.
Right. Being a child, like mentally, everything,
Right.
And was so mom and pops came, but where was the rest of the family? They stayed back?
They're still there.
They're still there.
So
Okay, great.
similar to you, I have a really rich kind of history with my family back in Kolkata. Aunties, uncles, my grandparents, cousins, family friends. We were fortunate enough to be able to go back, I don't say frequently, but we went back enough to be able to create bonds through our childhood, my brother and I. And, I'm still so close to my aunties and my grandmother and, all of that. And it's been, I'm sure you can relate to this. Growing up here, it's almost like you're in your pod. It's your parents, your sibling, if you have one, and it's just you guys against the world, and it's very foreign and it feels very isolating and lonely, to be honest. And then you go back home and you're like, oh, wow, like there's real community, there's real family, there's real love, and so I remember very, very distinctly like that idea of unconditional love exists outside of my parents through my aunts and through my, grandparents, and that had a really powerful effect on who I am today. I think that formed my worldview for sure.
What's up, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning into the Great Wall of America podcast. I just want to take a quick second now to give a shout out to Lunar Heart Seltzer, the sponsor for this series. Some of the best people, some of the best drinks, and they're always showing out for the community. So make sure you show them some love at Lunar Heart Seltzer. Back to the podcast. Yeah, I think if I think about that, it's like you have this this rich well of love and history back home, and you can like lean on that. I feel like lucky too, because I know a lot of Chinese American kids that they're so completely cut off from the families back home, just for whatever reasons, like, and then like they're trying to find their ways back, and they go, and it's like very emotional, and it's very emotional, but I also feel they also feel like a sadness that they wish they had that their whole life, like. And I think, like you said, we're lucky enough that we have that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that's extremely powerful if you have it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you haven't felt it, so it's harder to know what it feels like. But once you felt that, you're like, oh, I cannot give this up. Like, I have to maintain those relationships because it's just it's life-giving in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And, like, I've known you laterally for, like, over 10 years,
Crazy, yeah.
But like from back then, the Ani that I know to now, I think, and we'll get back to this, but the one thing that I noticed is this consistency of pride, and I do feel like because, you've been able to have that root and stay connected that whole time, and that like helped with that,
That's interesting, yeah. I think that's something that people from the outside would be able to notice better than I would, but that we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah, because like I do notice the opposite, sides of people where, they're rediscovering it, and they're like, then they have like a new sense of like pride and like energy, and you can tell that, I mean?
I see
like,
what you're saying.
It's very like obvious, almost like zealous in a way, it's like.
It becomes intense.
It becomes intense, yeah.
Cultural pride, for sure. That took a while though. I'm curious how it was for you, but I think growing up, there was definitely a phase in my life where I was embarrassed.
Rejection.
Right?
100%.
And then there comes that switch where you're like, oh, my culture and my heritage is actually extremely rich, and should I be so lucky to be, from here? And that, I think for me, happened probably in my early 20s. I had to get out of like the high school ecosystem and kind of like, be on my own for a little bit and understand like, oh no, this is a superpower to have the rich heritage that I do. And, today my business and my life is really based around telling that story. So it's just incredible where, your culture can take you. Yeah.
I like that you said telling the story. I do think what we're doing we are storytellers at the end of the day. Okay, so because what you said just now made me think of this phrase, and tell me if this phrase means anything to you. Too foreign for here, too foreign for home.
Yeah. Oh, I felt that. Just like you and, a lot of friends of mine. When we go back home, people know that we're not from there.
Right.
So you automatically...
What are some of your giveaways?
Man, listen, I've tried everything, dog. I've tried to blend in. It just don't work. India's a wild place, right? So if you wear anything white, like America white,
right.
people know.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you
I
mean.
can't.
Yeah.
Nothing stays white here.
Yeah.
So where you get that at? White sneakers?
Interesting.
Dead giveaway.
Wow.
My thing is probably just like always having a fade and white sneakers in India, bro. Like it's like dead giveaway.
Right.
I'd be putting everything else away. The watches, the phone, everything else is gone. But it's those two things.
Yeah, that kid's from New York.
Yeah, somewhere around, it's a dead giveaway.
Yeah. What were some of the, if you can recall, what were some of the music that was playing in the household, or like if it wasn't in the household, in earlier memories?
Yeah, no, of course, that's a great question, very important. A combination of music that was native to my parents' language and culture, so a combination of Bengali music and Hindi music, Bollywood, vintage, Bengali singers, folk singers.
Yep.
Obviously, Bollywood is a huge genre that's
Hell yeah.
changed a ton, but there was
Crazy.
definitely that influence.
And do you remember how did you feel about it? Was it like, what is this weird
Loved
shit?
it.
Oh, you loved it. Hell yeah.
Turned up to it. Yeah,
I love
me and
it.
my brother
Yeah.
used to turn up to it.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful. Like I didn't actually even understand the lyrics.
Sure. Yeah.
We spoke Bengali. The music is in Hindi, and I was like, I understand every 10th word, but melody, feeling, emotion, and just the rhythms, and it was just like, oh, okay, I'm all in.
Right.
And then that was my mom. Mostly.
So music was in you even as a kid. Like it resonated with you.
For sure. Yeah,
Right,
I think it did resonate with me, but I always think of this thing, Questlove from The Roots says, where it's like music listeners are split into people that listen to music critically and people that listen to music recreationally.
Okay, sure.
And so my parents were recreational music listeners,
Right.
to be fair. You know, so my dad, he was into the Beatles, Paul Simon,
all great music.
really great like classic folk rock,
Yeah.
or whatever that genre would be at that time. And so my brother and I had a little bit of that influence. And then for me, obviously, and you can relate to this, it's at some point in my own personal identity, my quest for personal identity, hip hop became the thing that I identified with.
Yeah.
Right. And that love affair with hip hop is an ongoing, 30-something-year-old affair.
Hell yeah.
But for me, like my parents were cool with music, right? Not so much rap music initially, but it was definitely in the house. It was definitely on.
And that was y'all's contribution, you and your brothers, the hip hop stuff.
Mostly me. My brother.
Okay,
my brother really got into the rock, the
Cool.
folk. He's super into Bob Dylan and the Beatles to this day. And I was always like, I wonder why. We talk about it now, where it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
And I think it's just me being the older one. And I don't want to say rebellious because that has the wrong connotation.
Right.
I was an individual even as a kid. So I used to skateboard. I used to listen to rap. I used to, when I got into my early teens, I used to collect sneakers. Like I was that guy early on, and my parents were like, "What are you doing? You need to go to Kumon."
Yeah.
Or you need
go to Kumon. What is that? Kumon?
Kumon is like, you know what Kumon is.
I don't know what Kumon is.
Yeah, it is.
It's like what, like an SAT camp?
Not for SATs, but yeah, for everything.
Oh, okay, I got you.
They were
Okay.
like, go to SAT camp.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to rap.
Right,
Like it was
yeah.
it was a whole different paradigm.
Yeah.
But my point being, I was outside. Like skateboarding when you're the only brown kid in your neighborhood, when you're 8, 9 years old. Like my parents weren't ready for that.
Right.
They thought I would be playing badminton or whatever, they grew up seeing kids doing, and I was like, nah, this is who I am. So I credit my parents for giving me the freedom to be who I wanted to be, but at the same time, counterculture, hip hop, skateboarding, fashion, those things have been in me for a very, very long time.
So your parents sound like they were very graceful about like letting you explore your interests and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, was there still an expectation of, the traditional roles of jobs and whatnot?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a certain and I still think about this, and I talk to a therapist about this, talk to my brother about this. I think there was a certain trauma that came from growing up with uncertainty, financial uncertainty. Your parents are finding their footing in America. Like all of that, I think did a number on me really early.
Sure.
And so I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna ever work for somebody when I was like 12 years old. Like I knew that I knew it that early because I used to see my dad get laid off a lot. I used to be in that lurch, with family, like you watching a check get bounced. Like it's just crazy things that when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, you're watching your parents go through it, and that stress is being, even if they don't mean to do it, you're feeling, you're absorbing it.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, I'm working for somebody who's crazy, and it took me, till I was 14, 15, 16 to articulate to my parents, like, I'm not really going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a banker, a software engineer. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be that. And I think they were like, oh, he'll grow out of it, whatever. And then today I'm like,
I grew into it.
And thank you guys for giving me the grace to just let me be. I never asked for no money. I never asked for no financial support. I never asked for no seed funding to do nothing. I was just like, just let me be. And I'm gonna figure it out.
Regardless, like, y'all support this or not, I love y'all, and I know y'all love me, and I'm gonna do my thing. And you were talking about watching them. You talked about trauma, and I think, as immigrants, we don't really talk about that enough. I just want to like kind of say something that was relating to what you just said about, growing up. I mean, like, I was reading this book called like The Body Keeps a Score, right? And then like great book, and then like somebody was like, yo, like, here's an alternative read because that book doesn't consider the culture differences. And that really made a difference for me because I remember after reading that book, I wanted to talk to my mom about, growing up and like not having like that kind of like, support that I needed, right? But she couldn't understand it. She was like, yo, I like gave up everything for you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and I was like, no, Mom, that's why I love you so much. And I'm trying to have this conversation. But there was like a disconnect. And I was like, oh, okay. So again, like even doing, it takes a lot to get to doing the work. But even as she's doing the work, I'm like, okay, there's a lot happening here,
Yeah, I think, and I've had a similar conversation with my parents. And I think the idea of us not accusing them, but basically bringing it to them like, yo, I didn't get everything I needed. They're like, what do you mean? I gave up everything. And it's true. Like they did give up everything. Right? And so I think that is very jarring for them to hear. And I've understood over time, like that's not the framework. Right. It's essentially, you guys did everything you could, but there was just things that we all went through that had an effect on me. Exactly. And it's not your fault. I think sometimes they're like, you're blaming me. And you're like, nah, man, I'm just, as I get older, I'm understanding why I am the way I am today is so much influenced by the things that hurt me.
The good and the bad that came from y'all.
And exactly. And it's not, it's not a victim mentality. It's not a, oh, woe is me thing. It's just like, it's just factual. People today are like, oh, you doing well, like you could relax a little bit. And I'm like, I don't know what that feels like because I grew up in a situation where everyone had their back against the wall. And that's all we've ever seen. So a couple of years of me doing well is not going to reverse that. I'm playing like my back is against the wall. For sure. And, it's there's a bit of healing, there's a bit of learning, you got to go through it. But I'm very grateful for what my parents gave me. Definitely. Definitely. Could not say that enough.
100%.
And they gave me emotional safety. And, I knew that my parents loved me from day one. There was never a question of that. And I think that created a security for me to be like, all right, well, I'm going to go do what I want. Yes. And
that makes sense.
And I know that I won't betray their affection. Because it's unconditional.
You're like, y'all did this to yourself. Y'all gave me so much love that I felt comfortable enough to do this.
Yeah, watch me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And so you was outside. And what was like some of your earlier friends? Were they like, you say like you're one of the few brown peoples in your world at the time. So who are some of the people that made up your earlier confidants and people that gave you,
Yeah. Man, I think one thing that's been unique about me, I was just thinking about this where my birthday was a couple days ago.
Oh shit! Happy belated.
Thank you. And I mentioned it because I was getting mad texts from just people, across the thing, and I was like, damn, I've straddled so many worlds in my time. So that that question you asked me, growing up, I had homies that, I used to play video games with, and I had homies that I used to rap. In a group with, and I had homies that I would play ball with or play soccer with, and I had homies that, you know, like I was skateboard with. Like it was
Yeah.
it was just so many different worlds, and I think I was always the kid that was a chameleon in a sense, where I could kind of adapt to most things. You know, I don't think
Sure.
I adapted to like, you know, the New England suburban,
Yeah.
you know, like boat shoe aesthetic. Like I was
Right.
like, that's too foreign for
Right,
me.
right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I grew up in a lot of worlds, man. I grew up, had
Yeah.
some really close homies. We used to skateboard, and then
Yeah.
growing up, when I started rapping, like I had a
Yeah.
lot of people I met through that.
Yeah.
So it was always a really diverse, you know, United Nations looking group of people. And
Sure. Yeah.
I think, you know, diversity in thought and diversity in talent and hobbies, that's what I think makes life rich. You know, like
Yep.
your friends all
Agreed.
coming from different places, maybe ethnically, but just culturally, like just mentally, emotionally, what they bring to the table. I think
Yeah.
I was able to get such a wide spectrum of the human experience
Hell yeah.
from an early age that today, as a business person, you deal with so many different people. And if you don't grow up understanding that and how to deal with different people, you don't build that skill.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting, right? Because when you run a restaurant or you build that type of business, you're dealing with, you know, everyone from the line cook, you know, the prep guy, to your barista, to your investors, to the public, to your celebrity partner.
Yeah.
It's a whole spectrum of people you got to communicate with every day.
Right.
And you got to know that everyone comes from a different place.
Right.
And I think I had that wealth of understanding just from being a kid, running around, being outside with just all types of people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think that does make a difference, you know, to be being comfortable later on in life to be dealing with all types of people backgrounds. You know, I just had a thought, because like you said, you're being introduced to all these worlds, but is there a possibility that at that time perhaps you were experimenting with so many different worlds because you were looking for something that meant something to you?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like hip hop stuck a little harder than maybe something else, you know. When I that wasn't really it wasn't really a question. It was like a thought. I just, you know.
I think
Yeah.
you have a similar experience, no, in terms of
Yeah, for sure. But for me, like I found hip hop and I was like, I'm just gonna do this, you know. Like I guess I did I did football, wrestling, and lacrosse.
Oh, wow.
I was very much trying to find friends that way too. Yeah. And you know, I think sports and music both were great things that, like, just, you know, because we're all just like not playing any of the games in the season, but we're still standing on the sideline freezing our ass off, you know.
Sure.
So we're connecting on like a really human level,
for
you
sure.
know?
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
music, rap. I mean, you know, I joke around sometimes, and I'm not joking. Where
Right.
I really, you know, there were things that my parents couldn't teach me because they just didn't go through that experience in this country, right? When it came to, you know, birds and the bees, like they didn't go through that, so
Right.
they can't teach me about women or dating or talking. You know, like that's not in their
Right.
repertoire. Getting money outside of a traditional work context, they can't teach me about that because
Right.
they've never done that. Surviving the elements, finding your identity, these things that were communicated through rap music, those things build my worldview, right?
Yeah,
So
relate to that.
it's like
Yes.
a Jay-Z line,
Yes.
I could still be like, that's how I think about
Yeah.
this thing in
Yeah,
my
yeah,
life.
yeah. Right.
And it's because that's what I learned.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any other context for it. So it's a good and a bad thing, you know?
Yeah. Right.
But I think hip hop not only saved my life, but it gave me, it was my compass,
Right.
you know, and
Man.
in so many ways, you know, still is, but it's different now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's so eloquently put, because I in the past I've talked about, I get certain values that I grown up with, like from Pac and shit, you know, like
It sounds
like,
crazy, but it's real.
it's real as hell, you know, like yeah, I think so. You know, this, the name of the podcast is Great Wall of America, Untold Stories. You know, it was inspired by the fact that sometimes I still feel uncomfortable as like the only Asian person in the room, you know, like and not so much these days, but like in the recent years, right? Like, and then you know, and then I started looking for history. I was like, oh shit, we built the railroads. Oh wait, we were the only ones that get kicked out of the country, about, you know. And I realized, oh, actually learning my own story in this country like helped me be more confident in the rooms, because I'm like, shit, we built the goddamn railroads that Rockefeller used, you know what I mean, like to ship the oil, so we do belong. And it's a lot easier to talk my shit when I know that I belong. You know, like, and obviously in the eyes of all the natives, we're all immigrants, right? Like, so, but you know, this is all recent discoveries, and like growing up, you know, because feeling like the only Asian kid in the room or whatever, I had to do things to make myself smaller just to fit in, you know. And I saw, you know, my mom do similar things. Were there stuff that you witnessed of your parents when you were a kid that what they had to do to make the Indian side of themselves smaller so they can fit in and be more American?
It's a great question. I think, I mean, the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have specific examples off the top, but I think the one thing that my parents did was, you know, inside the home, it was traditional until, you know, my brother and I were much older. Meaning, like, we spoke Bengali, we spoke our native language.
Cool.
I
That's
actually
great.
didn't know English when I went to preschool. Like, I had only, you know, that's how, like, rigid they were about that. And my mom, really, my pops is, he don't care. He's just hanging out. Food, you know, they would cook a couple times a week. It would be, you know, like traditional Bengali cooking. Song, music, dance culture, you know, those things were also like prioritized. And so that was a cool part. And also the difficult part where I'd be outside wearing, you know, Nike Dunks and some, you know, baggy jeans from wherever at, skateboarding, knowing and understanding life through that lens. And then you come home and it's like, you
code switching.
Total code switch. And not to jump too far ahead in the story, but for me, Kolkata Chai, the spiritual goal behind that business was to create a place where I didn't have to code switch when I came home.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I bring my homies to my parents' house.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, you hoping that they don't curse or say nothing crazy, or you hoping your mom doesn't start cooking something crazy. Like, there was just this like little bit of discomfort.
Yeah.
And that discomfort, I think, again, a childhood thing that I felt because I could never fully share how beautiful my parents were with my friends and vice versa.
Yes.
And now today, the business and the space that we've created, it's like all of that comes together. And it's not out of place.
It's not out of place.
So my parents would literally be sitting on a block in Nolita, and my homies just, you know, and it's like, it's all, it makes sense now.
Yeah.
So I think when starting a business and thinking through like the spiritual side of it, that was something that I was able to heal through my business, a childhood thing, you know, because now I'm like, nah, I'm so proud of the fact that all of this can coexist.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I was like, I know I can, but how do you explain that to people?
Right. Yeah, like, I think the best way that my best friends got to know me was after I took them on tour to China and they saw where I grew up. You know, that afterwards I felt like they saw me in a more real way, you know. And I love that, again, like, I think it's grace when certain kids grow up and their parents don't have the insight or the urgency to be like, yo, I need the kid to know the language, you know, like, so they know where they're from. So that's, again, like, blessing that you got that, you know. And so Kolkata. Kolkata.
You got it.
You said Kolkata just now. I feel like
there's different. So like, if I'm saying it traditionally, I'm saying Kolkata.
Okay. Right.
If I'm saying it like slightly westernized, I'm saying Kolkata.
Right. Because the emphasis is on the kol or the ka. Right.
Yeah.
Kolkata or Kolkata. You know.
Like, you're very, very correct. Let me think.
So,
Kolkata.
Right.
Kolkata.
So the real way is the emphasis on the kol.
On the first part.
Okay. Cool. Kolkata Chai.
Yeah.
And this is you and your brother's venture.
Yeah. Shout out.
Your
to my
brother's
brother.
name is
Ayan.
And Ani Sanyal.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is y'all's way of telling your story.
Absolutely.
Could you tell us a little bit about this? I know you probably talked about this, you know, on the business side. You know, for me, I wanted to get the personal story.
Yeah.
But and the personal story led us to Kolkata Chai.
Yeah. Again, a lot of things we just talked about. You grow up, things from your childhood you're trying to heal, you're trying to figure out. My brother also, you know, he wanted to be a musician. He had that creative streak. He was working a 9 to 5, and he was like, bro, this is crazy. Like, I can't do this. Like, I'm having like a spiritual crisis because I'm a creative person and
Right.
I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And him and I ran a marketing agency. That was our first business together.
Got it. Okay.
And then through that, we started to develop an idea of like, oh, there's a gap in the market for this cultural product that we grew up. You know, chai is like tea in China. I'm sure it's just it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
Right.
But you come to the West and you don't really get the level of authenticity, flavor, health, you know, benefits. Like it's just totally different here.
Right.
And so we looked at chai. My brother, we didn't look at chai as a market opportunity. My brother really just dipped out on me for like a winter one time. He was like, yo, I'm burnt out. I'm out of here. I'm like, where you going, dog? Like, what is going on? He's like, I'm going to India. I was like, all right. He ends up traveling through the tea gardens in India, in Darjeeling and other places. And just, he's like, yo, I'm obsessed with chai. He's like, America is so into third wave coffee. But like, there's this drink here that is so like complex with flavor and nuanced and nobody's talking about it.
Right.
I was like, whatever, man. Like, you know, we got a business to run.
Yeah.
I got clients. Like, come back home and do some work.
Yeah.
And he's like, whatever, man. You know, I'm outside. And I was like, all right. And so I'll skip the business side of it, but that basically turned that idea of how do we represent our culture? What do you do with the product as rich in history and flavor as chai? That turned into a business idea. And it started with the story, which was never manufactured because it was just real. My brother and I spent childhood summers in India, in Kolkata, trying to figure out how to sneak out of the house and get some street food, some chai, some snacks, playing cricket in the streets, you know, playing soccer in the street, listening to Bollywood, you know, watching cricket, like all these different things. And you come back home to the U.S. and none of that exists. And I'm curious to get your versions of what that is, like the things that you do when you're in the motherland, and then you come home and you're like, I cannot do any of those things.
For sure.
Because the infrastructure doesn't exist.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That story, and again, that's that tension where you're like, damn, like my family back home can never see what my world here is, and vice versa. We realized that Kolkata chai was this like really unique bridge because it was a heritage product in chai, but the story was progressive. It was today. It was modern. Right. Started at a farmer's market in 2018.
Wow.
In Jersey City.
Okay. In Jersey City.
Jersey. Shout out Jersey City.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And we literally just went from farmer's market to one small pop up to another pop up, and the lines went from 20 people to 200 people.
Wow.
And I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You know, and we're using social to really leverage that story. And that's when I realized, I was like, yo, there are so many people that are feeling seen for the first time because a brand is showcasing them on the Instagram feed or telling a story that they can relate to. Right. And that blossomed, spiraled, I don't know what you want to call it, but, you know, it basically led up to our first cafe in 2019. We opened in the East Village in New York City, 100 square feet. You know, my brother and I put up our own money for that. No investors, no secret codes, no rich uncles, and it was just like, is this gonna work? And it's been, you know, it was 800 people outside that night.
Woo, that's crazy.
Feet, you know, and that's when I was like, oh, this is nothing will be the same ever again.
Oh man.
And so yeah, today obviously 5 years in. Yeah, the business is growing. We brought a celebrity partner on in Hassan Minaj.
That's right.
We got 4 locations in Manhattan. In New York City. And yeah, man, it's a dream. It's a crazy thing when you look at, you're like, yo, I sold millions of dollars of chai.
What a dream.
How does that even make sense?
That's crazy.
You know,
so I love that.
It's a gift, man, for real.
Wow. I mean, there's so much there. Like, you know, so like you said, this has kind of been a lifelong in the making, right? Like from you were a kid and this being a part of your life, it's always been in front of your face the whole time.
It's crazy when you say it like that.
Yeah, you know, and like, and somehow, you know, like, you know, your brother had the, you know, like he escaped and went out there and I was like, yo, and I brought it to your attention and it was like a full circle. And you know, I think I only was aware of Kolkata like 2023 or like 2022.
Interesting.
You know, like, so for me, when I started hearing about it, and I was like, oh shit, it's Ani. That's crazy. You know, like, that's awesome. For congratulations. You know,
Thank you, man.
it's in and yeah, now it's 4 locations. Oh, okay. So I say that to say, like, you know, shit, y'all been grinding since 2018. You know, like, for me, I was like, oh man, like, this is dope.
Just
you know,
popped
it just
off,
popped
like,
up.
yeah,
You know, like,
yeah.
I love that it just popped off so hard. You know, like, but to know that the roots has been back in 2018. I mean, that honestly, it's a better story. It's a better story. You know, like, because I'm sure there were moments when y'all was like, all right, this isn't working out. Like, what's next? Or should we go back to the marketing company or whatever? Like, can you know, because like now we see the success, the 4 stores, you know, like, and I'm sure, like, you know, with more stores, with more responsibilities comes his own headache too, you know. So we'll leave that where it is, you know. But you know, now that we see some of the success story, I think, what were some of the moments that got really hard, and how did y'all push through that? You know, so when people out there that's also just like, this might be it for me to get that one more push. You know.
Yeah. Funny enough, I would say probably 90% of the past 5 years have been really hard.
Oh shit!
Like,
that's real.
You know, like,
Yeah.
every day for the most part is really hard.
Okay, yeah, that's real.
But there were moments that were harder than others, you know.
Right.
And the first one being the pandemic, and when New York City shut down. Right, we had just been in business
started.
for 6 months.
Oh my god.
And the funny thing is, when you're young and naive, you just do things because you believe in yourself or you believe in an idea.
Right.
We were not restaurateurs. We had no experience. We had nobody, no coach, you know.
Yeah.
Today, if someone was like, yo, open a restaurant without knowing, or a cafe without knowing anything about food, I'd be like, no, thank you.
Right.
Seems like the easiest way to lose money in the world.
Right.
But back then, it was like, man, I think we can do this.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it was that naive optimism.
Yeah.
But those moments where you're like, oh, are we shutting down forever? Because we literally just opened the cafe, and we haven't even been around long enough to get PPP and, you know, aid and all that. It was chaos.
Well, there's a lot of conversations there.
Man,
Oh,
hell
man.
yeah. It was dark, man. And then I think when you grow a business, it gets more challenging because, you know, with growth comes a whole set of other challenges. Because now you got payroll, you got people who depend on you to feed their families through what you are able to manage.
Damn.
Right? So if you goof up, you project something wrong, you spend too much money on something and it doesn't work out, now you're staring down a whole different problem. So I would say 90% of these past 5 years has been really hard. I think specifically that 2020 era was really difficult. But I think there's a reward in the difficulty that it's hard for me to, like, you know, when I talk about it, people are like, why would you go through something that's hard 90% of the time? It's really difficult. And, you know, it breaks down your body, it breaks down your mind, right? Emotionally, you're just always thinking about it. But I think there's a reward, and there's something, again, like, spiritually, I'm so convinced that this is what I was meant to do, or, you know, this is the path that my brother and I are on for a reason. That conviction is real, you know, and that trumps the fear, that trumps the uncertainty, the darkness. It all becomes quiet in my mind when I think about the level of conviction I have for what I do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you could argue, like, there's nothing that's worth doing that's not hard, you know. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I go on a rant?
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Can I give a quick rant?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, like, in my own time, journaling, so I got to get this one off.
Get it off. I love it.
I feel like we live in an era where everyone is focused on pain avoidance, meaning we want to live the easiest life, the soft life, sit on your couch and just, you know, your entire day unfolds from your phone. You don't got to get up. You don't got to interact with nobody. And pain avoidance is driving people towards mediocrity. Because, to your point, the best things come from working through the pain. And pain tolerance, to me, is, I think, the greatest test of human character. Again, I grew up with immigrant parents. You know, I'm in my mid-30s, so I have a different lens than a lot of, you know, young people or maybe people in your audience. But this idea of pain tolerance versus pain avoidance,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've completely goofed up that formula in the last couple of years. Technology and society moving towards pain avoidance, but pain tolerance is where the magic happens. It's staying up in the studio until 5 a.m. trying to get that song right. It's pushing through on your business. It's doing the things the unscalable things that are just hard. You know, you writing notes to every customer or whatever it is. All these things that you probably gone through as artists. But I think that true genius and the most valuable things come out of going straight into the pain. And having tolerance to fight through the pain.
Yeah. I love that. I think I'm glad you threw that rant in there, because I think these kind of conversations needs to be had more, like this idea of choosing suffering. And you know, for me, it comes down to I either suffer the pain of doing what I love, or I suffer the pain of just like being aimless and purposeless, you know, and that pain ultimately is more painful, you know, because you can't work through that. So I love that. The emphasis on choosing the pain and working through the pain. And could you talk about how it feels when you started seeing all different kinds of people from different different culture backgrounds to come and enjoy chai, and the look on their faces, maybe like, you know, understanding like, oh, I don't have to say chai tea, you know, like all this like nuances where, you know, what is really happening is that chai is actually connecting the different cultures. How does that make you feel? And, you know, is there any stories around that?
I'll probably talk an hour about this, but it's very powerful.
Yeah.
You know, because food, I think, is a thing that it's so visceral. Like you taste something and it's memories, it's connections, it's a sense of heritage, it's community, right? Like I think there's a lot of similarities between South Asian culture and East Asian culture in terms of how we come together around food. And, you know, being behind a computer for most of my life, when it came to my work, you don't ever feel those things that you feel when you're watching somebody consume something you made, right? Like, yeah, your post can go viral and you'll get that, you know, that dopamine hit.
Yep.
But it's not the same as watching somebody in their mid-20s bring their mom to the cafe, and you know, the mom's like, oh my God, this is just like I used to have it back in Kolkata. Those moments, right, it's so powerful. And so I have learned to be more humble and appreciate those moments rather than just take them for granted. But it's a deeply, you know, moving experience. I was just at the cafe earlier today, and I had an investor meeting, so I was in like that mode of just like, you know, in my bag. And then I'm about to leave, and this couple like stops me, and they're like, hey, we just want to say like we're such big fans. And I was like, oh, you know, thank you so much. Or, like, I'm curious where you guys are from, whatever. And they're like, oh, we're from Tennessee. And I was like, what are you doing here? And they're like, every time we come to New York, this is our spot. And I was just like, what are the chances? You know, and it's like these small anecdotes and vignettes that remind you like, oh, wow, the power of food, the power of culture is just, it's uncompromising.
And what was this couple's ethnicity?
Non-South Asian.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Maybe you need to open one in Tennessee. You know,
that's next, right? Catch me in Nashville.
Yeah. Or even like, you know, I feel like LA, you know.
We're working on it.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I mean, it is also, you know, I was in Shanghai one time doing like this is like years ago. I was asking local streetwear clothing brand owners, you know, picking their brain and stuff. And there was this Shanghai clothing brand called Doe, DOE, and the owner's name is Him. HIIM. And I remember asking him, I was like, yo, so when are you going to open DOE in like Chengdu or Beijing? He goes, you know, he's like, you don't expect to see the Great Wall in like another place. You know, it's like, that's the landmark of China, you know, so Doe is the landmark of Shanghai, and it will never leave, you know,
There's
because I want people to, when people come, they can only get Doe here, you know, like, I was like, that's hard. That's so hard.
He hit you with the bar right there.
That's so hard. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
I think you know, in a way, I guess how you're affecting people with chai, it's almost like how hip hop affected you in the early days. You know, like,
wow, I never thought about that.
Like another culture, you know, brought you something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, for you and me, one commonality
sure.
that we have is, we were guests in hip hop culture.
Oh yeah.
Because that wasn't our culture.
Right.
And I think that to me was always so beautiful about hip hop, about rap, is that you could, as long as you were respectful,
Yep.
you could be a part of somebody else's culture in a way that was welcoming.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
it was, I don't know, you were on the lacrosse, you playing with,
I was trying to get some girls, man. Like,
feel
I
you
seen the
on that.
lacrosse players get the girls, and I was like, I think maybe that'll work.
I ain't mad at you, Playboy. You know what I mean? But like that, you can't. Lacrosse culture was not accepting people that
For sure.
was looking like me.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
hip hop was open arm. It was in open arms, and I think that's
Yeah.
really powerful. That says a lot about just the effect of black music and black culture in America. And,
Oh, yeah.
and how welcoming and open it's been with hip hop.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, Chai, I think we've taken that same stance where it's, it's for us, by us, but that us is everybody. It's not just for brown people, or it's not just for so-and-so.
Right.
We want to make it accessible for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like one of those this is only us only thing,
Good.
and I think sometimes like those are like, I feel like the initiatives are good, but like I think ultimately, you want everyone to be involved. How, I guess you kind of answered this earlier when you said that your parents gave you that love to, point where you had the foundation and the confidence to go out. But I think there's a lot of people in our that are immigrant child, and they see the sacrifice the parents make, and they don't want to disappoint them, but they have this like, especially now we're information age, right? Like, and also like I feel like we're at a spiritual rot as as humanity, like, and a lot of people are having this like kind of spiritual awakening. It was like, yo, I want to do something for me, but what about my parents? Like, how do I come to terms with that? Can you share about anything about taking that leap of faith as an immigrant child? Whether that fear of almost like not, whether it's not making it or letting your parents down.
Yeah. I thought about this a lot in my life. I think the ultimate way to let your parents down is to not be happy yourself. Right? That's one of
That's
them. And
real.
the second thing is, ultimately, you are the person that lives your life. Your parents don't live your life.
Right.
And so the choices and decisions that you make for yourself that keep you fulfilled, that keep you happy, that is going to lead to you having the strongest relationship with your parents as, life evolves. Because, you've seen it, like, our parents go from being disciplinarians and authority figures to being our friends, to being someone that we have to take care of, right? That shift that happens through life, that something I'm dealing with now, and it's really hard to accept,
Right.
But I think a lot of people fear their parents, or they think about they're going to be in that relationship with their parents where it's a disciplinary, authoritarian thing the whole time,
Right.
authority thing the whole time. It's not. It's you're gonna be your pops' best friend, or your mom's friend at some point in time, and you want to have a fulfilled life to be able to
That's real.
meet them where they want to see you at. So I think
Right.
that was one thing. Yeah, man, I count this as one of my biggest like blessings, was just like, I figured it out, which helped. Like we figured out what that final form of my brother and I's creative kind of itch was gonna be.
Yeah.
And it was something that made our parents really proud.
Yeah.
But I was never worried about, what are my parents gonna think? You probably had the same thing. You got a show, you invite your parents out, they're in the back acting awkward somewhere, they don't understand what you're saying, the music too loud, right? Like hip hop, I used to invite my parents out when I used to rap, and they're like, what? Well, okay, like, sure.
Yeah,
But we don't know. We didn't hear a word you said.
Right.
And I was like, word.
Yeah.
I was getting it off though.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
my point is,
Yeah.
you being them seeing you happy, and them seeing you in that moment,
Yeah.
and you being your true self.
Yeah.
That's where the real magic is.
Yeah.
Being a shell of a person just because you did everything your parents wanted you to do.
Right.
That's not it.
Right. Yeah, and I guess sometimes it's risky, but we do have to kind of, at some point be like, maybe they don't really know the best for us at some point. You know, maybe like when we're younger, yeah, like you said, like that relationship, and then at some point it changes, and you have to be confident enough to make your own decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, I feel like you have to the confidence of love between the you know, you and the family have to be really solid in order for you to make that decision.
And both sides got to work on it.
Both sides got to
because
work
relationships change over time. Like
Yeah.
Your relation to your parents is not the same
Right.
at 8, 18, or 38. You
Right.
know, it's different.
Right. And then when they see you making an effort, they'll make an effort to meet you.
1000%, yeah.
Right. Well, speaking about, you know, that parent and, you know, child relationship, you know, if you had a chance to say something to the 11 or 12-year-old Ani, you know, what would you tell him? Not something like that's like a platitude, like work harder or something, some other truth, you know.
Damn, it's a good one. 11 or 12, that's when, I think that was just when I was starting to get into rap. That was probably when I was starting to understand, like, oh, I'm not going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like, this is not going to work for me. What would I tell myself? I've always been like, yo, somebody asked me this question, and then I don't got to answer it off the top. Nah, it's a great question. I think I would tell myself, you know, everything that you want in life is going to be on the other side of the fear that you have and the other side of the anxiety you have of things not working out. All the good stuff is on the other side of that, and you have to find confidence and work through that. I think as kids, didn't have a lot of confidence, right? Things were not really going right in our lives at home. You used to wear that when you went to school, you know, at least I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
So I think I would just tell myself, like, it's what you want is on the other side of all the things that scare you. And so you really got to make sure you're good with yourself until you can achieve the things you want.
Choose the pain.
Yeah, you know, that part.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I think another semi-rant, I'm going to keep it short.
Yeah, no, please.
I was going to say I lost my train of thought, is the fear is something that obviously is just a natural human instinct, but fear is also partially like made up, which I know is like a generic thing you'll hear, but if you actually think about, you know, imposing fear on yourself is never going to be the answer to getting to the things you want. So I think when people are like, oh, I don't know, I'm like, do you want to choose being scared, or do you want to choose the life you lead and the life you want to lead? And it's that binary. And, you know, always choosing what you want, I think, helps you break through those barriers.
Hell yeah. Is there anything else you wanna leave us with?
Man, I'm actually, I got questions for you, man.
Oh man.
Yeah,
I mean, I wanted to make this about you, but I'll answer a question.
I'll get one question.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you. You obviously been doing music for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've seen you be so committed to.
Yeah.
Through all the eras. You know, I think in high school, you started high school?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so like same kind of story where, you know, but you're still doing it.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, it speaks a lot to your conviction. What is your, who do you want to be as an artist for the world? Like, what do you want to leave?
I think man, you know, I saw my friend tweet something. She was like, would you rather be celebrated now and then forgotten later, or like, you know, not be celebrated now, but like, you know, once you leave, you remember great? And I said, well, that all depends on other people, both those things, you know. And I was like, I feel like I want to leave something for myself, you know. And one of the best things I liked about Rick Rubin's book was, he said the masterpiece of an artist is not his best album, it's not the best stretch of his career, it's his whole life. And I think that's something I resonate with, you know. So even though I'm still making music has gone from my whole identity, from like a 12, 13-year-old kid, to now it's just something that I do. You know, if I have any dilemma about still rapping, is that I do get envious of artists who work with very traditional Chinese templates and mediums. For example, this guy named Cai Guoqiang, he works with gunpowder. And he's a firework artist. And I'm like, yo, that's so dope. Like Chinese people invented gunpowder, and it's only just been used in guns. Like, but he created those in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. He's the one that did those like big steps that made it look like it was like people walking towards the arena, but it was fireworks and shit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think about stuff like that. I think about like Bruce Lee. I think about people who are really working with Chinese stuff, like you said, like you were doing, right? Like you're working with something that's literally from the place of your birth. To me, there is just like something deeper in that, And for me, I feel like what carried me through all these years is the confidence hip hop gave me, and the tool that I've been able to use to connect with people. But I think it's no longer connect. It doesn't make me connect with myself as much as I want it to be, So as I'm working out the music that I still enjoy and making passionately, I am, looking for other ways to continue this story. So, and so watching you and watching your brother do what y'all do, it's an inspiration. I don't mean that as a platitude. It really is, like, I think it's really easy to like use something not tangible, but I mean, seeing y'all open up storefront after storefront, that's real, And us going back over a decade, but this is us first time sitting down having this conversation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, man.
And I appreciate your story, bro.
Yeah, let's get it.
My man.
Love.
All right. And how can we support y'all in Kolkata Chai?
Any support is support. Share something on social. Go to Amazon, buy some chai, try it for yourself. Pop by a cafe in New York. Tell somebody about it. Put somebody else on. I appreciate every little piece that people play in the story.
I love it. And can you leave us with the quote with that y'all played the twist on with 50?
Yeah. The Get Rich or Chai Trying.
Get Rich or Chai Trying. I love that.
Time.
All right, thank you, brother.
Of course.
Peace, everyone.